Dr. Marcus Chen stood in his penthouse apartment on the 43rd floor, staring at a single cupcake with a flickering candle that cast dancing shadows across the marble countertop. 52 years old today, and the only sound in the vast, elegantly furnished space was the hum of the refrigerator and the distant wail of sirens from the city below. He had saved 17 lives this year alone, performed surgeries that other doctors deemed impossible, and earned accolades that filled an entire wall in his office. Yet here he was, about to blow out a candle in complete solitude, wondering when success had become synonymous with emptiness. The journey to this moment had been long and deliberate. Marcus had sacrificed everything for his career: relationships, friendships, holidays, and countless personal moments that could never be reclaimed. After his divorce 15 years ago, he had thrown himself entirely into his work, using the operating room as a sanctuary from the messiness of human connection. His ex-wife had told him during their final argument that he had a brilliant mind but a locked heart, and perhaps she had been right. He had built walls so high around himself that even he couldn't remember what it felt like to let someone in. Every birthday for the past decade had been spent exactly like this one, alone with his achievements and his regrets, celebrating a life that looked perfect from the outside but felt hollow within. If this story touches your heart, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment below, and subscribe to our channel. If you believe in the power of kindness and second chances, your support means the world to us. Marcus closed his eyes and made a wish he didn't believe would come true, then blew out the candle. The smoke curled upward, disappearing into the expensive recessed lighting above. He was about to throw the cupcake away when his doorbell rang, and sound so unexpected that he actually flinched. In the 5 years he had lived in this building, no one had ever appeared at his door unannounced. His heart quickened as he walked across the polished hardwood floors, and when he opened the door, he found himself staring at a young woman in her mid-20s holding a worn cardboard box and a bouquet of sunflowers. She had kind eyes that reminded him of someone, though he couldn't immediately place who. Her smile was tentative but warm, and when she spoke, her voice trembled slightly with nervousness. She introduced herself as Sophie Whitmore, and the name struck him like a thunderbolt. Whitmore. The memory came flooding back with such force that he had to steady himself against the doorframe. 12 years ago, he had treated a woman named Catherine Whitmore, a single mother with late-stage cancer who had been told by 3 other doctors that nothing could be done. Marcus had spent 6 months developing an experimental treatment protocol specifically for her case, working 18-hour days, calling in every favor he had, and refusing to give up even when the odds seemed insurmountable. The treatment had worked. Catherine had lived, and Marcus remembered the day he gave her the news that she was in remission. Remembered the way she had wept in his office, holding the hand of her teenage daughter and thanking him over and over again. He had waved off her gratitude with professional modesty as he always did, and moved on to the next case. He never knew what happened to his patients after they left his care. It was easier that way, cleaner, less complicated. But now here was that teenage daughter, grown into a beautiful young woman, standing at his door on his birthday with tears in her eyes and a story to tell. Sophie explained that her mother had lived for 10 wonderful years after that treatment, years filled with joy and laughter and precious memories that never would have existed without Marcus's intervention. Catherine had watched Sophie graduate high school, had helped her through her first heartbreak, had been there for her college graduation, and had danced at her wedding just 8 months ago. But 3 months ago, the cancer had returned with a vengeance, and this time, there was nothing anyone could do. Catherine had passed away peacefully, surrounded by family, and in her final days, she had talked constantly about Dr. Chen, the man who had given her the gift of time, the miracle worker who had cared enough to fight for her when no one else would. Marcus felt his carefully constructed walls beginning to crack as Sophie continued. Catherine had left specific instructions. She had kept a journal during those 10 extra years of life, documenting every beautiful moment, every milestone, every experience that she would have missed if not for Marcus's dedication. She wanted him to have it, wanted him to know that his work had meant something beyond medical charts and success rates. Sophie opened the cardboard box and pulled out a leather-bound journal, its pages worn and filled with handwriting, photographs, ticket stubs, and mementos. As Marcus took it in his hands, he felt the weight of something he had been missing for years, the human connection that gave meaning to all his technical skill and knowledge. Sophie wasn't finished. She told him that while going through her mother's things, she had discovered something else, a birthday calendar where Catherine had marked Marcus's birthday every single year, always writing a note of gratitude beside the date. She had wanted to honor him, to celebrate the man who had saved her life, but she had been too shy to reach out, too worried about bothering someone so important and busy. When Sophie realized that today was his birthday, she knew she had to come. She couldn't let another year pass without him knowing how profoundly he had impacted their lives, how his compassion had rippled out in ways he could never have imagined. Marcus invited Sophie inside, and for the first time in years his apartment felt like a home, rather than a museum of his achievements. They sat in his living room and he read passages from Catherine's journal, each entry revealing the beautiful ordinariness of a life well lived. A picnic in the park, a movie night with Sophie, a Thanksgiving dinner surrounded by family, a quiet morning watching the sunrise. These were not grand moments by any measure, but they were everything. They were what life was actually about, and Marcus had been so focused on extending life that he had forgotten to actually live his own. Sophie shared stories about her mother, about the woman Catherine had been, funny, resilient, endlessly optimistic even in her final days. She showed Marcus pictures on her phone, and he was struck by how happy Catherine looked in every single one, how her joy seemed to radiate from the screen. Sophie told him that her mother's final wish was for him to know that he hadn't just saved one life that day 12 years ago. He had preserved an entire universe of love, relationships, and connections that surrounded Catherine. Every person she had touched in those 10 years, every life she had influenced, every moment of happiness she had created, all of it existed because of his skill and dedication. As the evening wore on, Sophie revealed why she had really come. Her mother had always worried about Dr. Chen, had wondered if the man who gave so much to others ever received anything in return. Catherine had sensed a loneliness in him during those treatment sessions, a distance that seemed protective but also isolating. In her journal, she had written that she hoped someone would someday help Dr. Chen the way he had helped her, not by curing a disease, but by reminding him that he was more than his work, that his life had value beyond his achievements, that he deserved connection and joy and love just as much as anyone else. Sophie told Marcus that she had started a foundation in her mother's name to help families dealing with cancer, and she wanted him to be part of it, not as a doctor but as a person. She wanted him to meet the families they helped, to see the impact of compassion in real time, to understand that medicine was not just about procedures and protocols but about the precious, fragile, beautiful gift of time spent with people we love. She wanted to give him what her mother couldn't, the knowledge that his life mattered not just in operating rooms but in the small, quiet moments that make up a meaningful existence. Marcus felt something break open inside him, a dam that had been holding back years of unacknowledged emotion. For the first time in longer than he could remember, tears streamed down his face, not tears of sadness but of relief, of recognition, of finally understanding what he had been missing. He had spent so many years running from connection, believing that professional excellence was enough, that keeping people at a distance would protect him from pain. But Sophie's visit showed him that isolation was its own kind of death, that a life without meaningful relationships was just an extended form of absence. As Sophie prepared to leave that night, she handed him one more thing from the box, an envelope with his name written in Catherine's handwriting. Inside was a birthday card she had written but never sent, dated just weeks before she died. The message was simple but profound. She thanked him for her life, for the gift of time, for caring enough to see her as a person rather than just a case, and she told him something that would change everything. She had asked Sophie to find him and invite him to truly live, to take the compassion he showed his patients and finally turn some of it toward himself, to build a life that was as rich in connection as it was in achievement. Marcus stood at his door long after Sophie left, holding the journal and the card, feeling the weight of a second chance. The next morning, he called Sophie and accepted her invitation to join the foundation. Over the following months, he began to open his carefully guarded heart, attending foundation events, meeting families, sharing meals with colleagues instead of eating alone in his office, and slowly building the relationships he had denied himself for so long. On his 53rd birthday, his apartment was filled with people, Sophie and her husband, families from the foundation, colleagues who had become genuine friends, and even his ex-wife. with whom he had cautiously rebuilt a friendship. As he looked around at the faces gathered to celebrate with him, Marcus finally understood what Catherine had tried to teach him through her journal and her daughter's visit. Success wasn't measured in awards or accolades or the number of lives saved in an operating room. It was measured in moments of connection, in the relationships we nurture, in the love we give and receive, and in the courage to let others see our vulnerability. He had spent so many birthdays alone, believing he didn't need anyone. But the truth was that everyone needs someone, to witness their life, to share their joy, to remind them that they matter beyond what they can do or achieve. That evening, surrounded by laughter and warmth, Marcus made a new birthday wish. He wished for the courage to keep his heart open, to continue building this new life he had discovered, and to honor Catherine's gift, not just by saving lives, but by truly living his own. And as he blew out the candles, 53 of them this time on a real cake made by Sophie herself, he knew that this wish, unlike so many before it, was already coming true.